Season 7 continues to be amazing with Doctor Who and the Silurians, as we continue the Doctor Who reviews with its the second story of Season 7. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who and the Silurians. The second story from Season 7, as I mentioned already. Well, the season anyway, not the story. So the plot of Doctor Who and the Silurians is... there's this science research centre, power centre. Yeah, research centre in Derbyshire at Wensley Moor. And they're having some power loss problems, so units has been called in, and the Doctor and Liz then go up to aid the Brigadier. And eventually they discover that these creatures called the Silurians, who used to be the rulers of the Earth before going into hibernation to avert a catastrophe that never actually happened, as the catastrophe would have been a small planet colliding over the Earth, but it actually got caught in the Earth's gravitational belt and became the Moon. So the Silurians eventually would wake up, not after the disaster, but after the power station was built. And so now they're using the power to revive their Silurians, the other Silurians, and they intend to wipe out the human race with a virus, as they do not believe they can share the planet with the humans. Apart from the leader, who attempts to help with the Doctor, but he's then killed by one of the young up-and-comings, basically. This young radicalist. Yeah, the young people seem to always be portrayed as the radicalists in Doctor Who, aren't they? Yeah, I should probably be aware. Be careful. And after the Doctor and unit are trying to find, Dr. Liz and unit are trying to find a cure, the Silurians then attempt to take the base by force and use it to make the world uninhabitable. However, the Doctor is able to trick them into believing there's another crisis, although there almost is a crisis, but he manages to stop it. And that's basically Doctor and the Silurians. The Silurians are eventually killed by the Brigadier at the end. See how quickly I talked about this? This story takes 7 episodes to go through the entire plot. But to be honest, unlike the previous times, I actually was okay with watching this story being a 7-parter. I'm actually okay with it. I think maybe it could be okay at 6, but 7 wasn't actually that bad for me. I think this is like Evil the Daleks and next story, Ambassadors of Death. I'm okay with it being this long because it's actually pretty good, and I actually enjoyed it a lot more on the rewatch and found it a much better story. Again, like The Invasion, I've never actually had this amount of enjoyment from this story ever, even since I first watched it, and this was my first one. As I mentioned at the end of my previous review, this is the first DVD I got along with The Sea Devils and Warriors of the Deep. First classic Doctor Who DVD, that is, in the Beneath the Surface box set, back in late 2010, December 2010, just before Christmas. Fun story, my aunt was actually given it, maternal aunt was given it by some friends who didn't want it anymore, I think, and then she just gave it to me after a visit. Just before Christmas, and yeah, and gave them a check out, and I liked them. Funny enough, Warriors of the Deep was until now, my favourite Homo Reptilia story. That's right, Warriors of the Deep. Usually considered one of, if not the worst, well, not the worst, but one of the worst stories from the show, certainly the classic era. Yeah. That was my favourite after a lot, despite seeing this, The Sea Devils, and the two-parter from Series 5, The Hungry Earth Cold Blood. This excludes Silurian appearances in The Pandorica Opens, A Good Man Goes to War, and The Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, and Anytime Man and Vastra's around. But yeah, so just normal Silurian and Sea Devil stories. Warriors of the Deep used to be my favourite. I just find it I find it entertaining. it's stupid. It's really silly, and I'm probably gonna call it out on those bits in its review. But like Delta and the Bannerman, it's fun. Except Delta and the Bannerman is good fun, but Warriors of the Deep isn't. But yeah, so you can tell my what my perception of Silurians and Sea Devil stories are, when Warriors of the Deep used to be my favourite of the stories, and I actually find Cold Blood to be a pretty bad episode. Hungry Earth was actually okay. Sea Devils I liked, but was in love with it. I think that would have been the next best one after Warriors, and then this one kind of came in between, around the same place as Hungry Earth, just a little bit less. Hungry Earth, Cold Blood together, I think it's just behind it. But after rewatching this story, this one's shot up to the top. Warriors has been knocked down, and Sea Devils has got a fair chance to go one spot higher. And if that's the case, then I will safely say that the Silurian and Sea Devil stories get worse every time, because I'm not going to put Warriors of the Deep lower than Cold Blood. Hungry Earth maybe, but not Cold Blood. Not Cold Blood, I don't like that story. It's not as bad as the next series two-part story, but certainly not one of the strongest from the Matt Smith era. But back to this story. So yeah, after rewatching this one this time round, it's now become my favourite Silurian story. And it'll probably stay that way, to be honest. And same for Homo Reptilia in general. That was another story I was trying to work out. I told you the story about getting it, and I told you the story about position on the ranking. I think that's about it. Oh, funny enough, it was 2010 was the year the Silurians did come back to the show. In that Series 5 two-parter that I half like, half don't, and would put it at the bottom of the list overall. Following other stories featuring the Silurians, I think they're all better, maybe, or not all of them. All of them better than Cold Blood, definitely, but not all better than this story. I think quite a few are better, and a couple are around here to Hungry Earth level, and some lower. But all of them better than Cold Blood. But they're not real. They're not proper Homo Reptilia stories. They're either just appearances or adventures with Madame Vastra. And it's the same with the Sontarans when you take Strax with Strax and normal Sontaran stories and Sontaran appearances, like in The End of Time and the Pandora Opens. Anyway, so this story continues to have great acting from our main characters and main actors, John Pertwee, Caroline John, and Nicholas Courtney. They're all brilliant again. This story also features two actors who will go on to reappear in the show a few more times. Lawrence Miles, I believe it was. Peter Miles as Professor Lawrence in this film. He later pops up in... the actor plays another character in Dinosaurs, Invasion of the Dinosaurs, as Professor Whitaker. And he's Nida in Genesis of the Daleks and the I, Davros audios. So he's most famous for that role, by the way. Whilst Jeffrey Palmer, who plays Masters in the story, not to be confused with The Master. This is the first pre-The Master we've had so far. We've had the one from Abominable Snowman, we had the one from The Mind Robber, plus the computer from that story, and now we have Masters here. The next Master will probably be The Master next season. Anyway, but Palmer reappears as a character in The Mutants in Season 9. Invasion of the Dinosaurs was 11 and Genesis was Season 12. And then Palmer will return as a captain in 2007's Voyage of the Damned, the Christmas special of that year, between series 3 and 4. And both of them do very good jobs with their roles. I also like Professor Quinn. He's a very good character. It's a shame he dies nearly about halfway through the story, but it's nice, and you get the sense he and Miss Dawson, another scientist, they're hiding something, and Quinn knows some people who are going to give him promised him scientific knowledge. According to Miss Dawson, he found the Silurians while spot holding. You don't actually get to see the Silurians properly until the end of part 4, when that Silurian pops out, and then you get to see the rest of them later on. It's no, it's not part 4. End of part 3, and then part 4 we get to see them properly. You do get to see a glimpse of this Silurian in part 2, and there's some nice visual clues with the cave, the drawings on the wall by one of the injured miner scientists who goes caving, and there's some nice Easter eggs and making you think what it looks like, and then you get the proper first shot of the character close up at the end of part 3 is the cliffhanger, and from there on the story gets even better as we get introduced to the characters. We get some peaceful ones, and then we get some radicalist ones. And typically, the humans want to destroy them without understanding them. And yeah, the story is very good at making the Silurians look like humans. They will attack when aggravated, and they've got the same humanoid qualities. They're just part reptile. That's all. They got eye. I was going to say not sure about the eye, but now I can see why they needed the eye. It's used as a weapon, and it's used as a tool, and it works well. They took it away for the 2010 ones and just made them humanized lizards as opposed to just plain reptiles. I honestly prefer the new design, but the third eye is a very practical design of it. I suppose maybe it's there is a slight variation between this one and the one in Warriors of the Deep, and same for the sea levels, so we can have other versions of Silurians, I suppose. Also, that dinosaur is only used a few times. The one that's on the cover attacks the cavers at the end, at the start, and I think that bit was over really quickly. I think the dinosaur attacked them too soon after they got into the caves. Not to mention the Silurians let an innocent man getting killed whilst they recalled the dinosaur away before it can do any harm to the Doctor or Major Baker, who's an okay character. Maybe the Silurians weren't. Not all the Silurians were awake by that point. By the way, the controls that they have to get away the dinosaur, which we get a great shot at the end of part 1 of, and the tracking control sounds, they sound like gates opening and closing, and it actually gets actually a bit annoying. You can find a better sound effect, guys, and it's even more annoying when it's sped up a little bit when the Silurian is found by Quinn. But not an awful sound. It's alright, and the third part feels like a big scope. After the previous story where it was very location based, it did feel a bit odd coming back to a bit more of a set base, but once we got some location shots added in, then it felt great. And the part 2 and part 3 bits where they're trying to search for the Silurian is amazing, even if they weren't overall necessary, but it's still really amazing. Those would be some of the bits I would lose for parts to get it down to 6 episodes, but most of the stuff I would actually lose would be from part 1 or part 2, 6, maybe for 2 or 3 as well. I think 4, 5 and 7 are fine. And the search for the cure, that's actually pretty interesting despite not having that much to work with, but it's still pretty interesting, and the Silurian interactions are also pretty fun. Although how they can seal up a wall with their eyes quickly when it took them a bit of time to burn it down. Oh well, maybe they have urgency this time around. And overall, the final message of the story is really clear and is executed really well, and it's just handled greatly, and it's a fun, enjoyable story. It is a bit too long, but besides that, and I think some other nitpicks I've had, it's still a very good story, and it's a great second story for Pertwee. So overall, I'm going to give Doctor Who and the Silurians. I originally had it at 6. After watching it, I thought it'd be an 8, and then when I was in the loo of all places, I thought, fuck it, 9. So I'm going to give Doctor Who and the Silurians a 9 out of 10. I'm surprised too. It just works really well. I just think it could have been a little bit shorter and had a few other nitpicks, but it's still a really great story. It's not better than Spearhead from Space, but it's still really great. And I think I can see why, I'm starting to see why so many people would consider season 7 their favourite season of the show. Because the next Doctor Who story is another great story as well, and that is The Ambassadors of Death. And then the final story, Inferno, is a favourite amongst fans. Pre-review, rewatching thoughts on that story. Not the biggest fan of it, but I like it. See how it goes next time, next viewing. But I expect it will be positive, but I don't know if it'll be as positive as the other 3 stories. Ambassadors of Death, on the other hand, should be positive, even if it's not as much as Spearhead from Spaces. This one should be positive. At least I hope so. You haven't let me down so far. So, yeah. Next time, The Ambassadors of Death. And then Inferno. And anyone who loves that story and is worried that it might not be so... I might not find it so great. Well, starters, opinion. Second of all, I think it's a good story. It will get a positive review unless I think otherwise on the rewatch. Thirdly, if the last 2 this story and the last one are any last 2 anything to go by, I might even like it even more on the rewatch. And finally, well, we'll see. I'll have to rewatch it first. So anyway. And also, all of this season is very positive anyway. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. And that's where we cut back. Yeah. Excuse me. But anyway. Anyway, so... Excuse me. And then we get some... I honestly prefer the new ones. What was that?